Woody Allen is one of Hollywood's most prolific and respected filmmakers. He's probably best known for his prowess as a screenwriter, but something people don't talk about as much with Allen is his fascination with distance and the unusual ways he can use it to communicate things about characters. We begin the same way that Allen's dramatic career began, with his 1975 film Love and Death. Love and Death is a comedy, but marked his exploration into more refined filmmaking. The following regards the ending of the film, so if you hate spoilers, go away. In the end of the film, Allen's character Boris has died and is to be taken away by death. Before he does, he delivers a monologue to the audience describing what he's learned over the course of the film. The monologue is shot in a close-up from a low angle. When he wraps up and accepts his fate, the next and final shot is that of him dancing down a wooded path with death, in full silly acceptance of his fate. But in contrast to the previous shot, where Allen spoke to the audience, this is an extreme wide. In a sense, the previous shot was our last look at Allen up close as a living being, and the distance of the shot suggests his distance from us as he accepts death and moves on to the next world. Or hell, I mean, it is Woody Allen. Maybe you're not convinced that this is really a significant element of his technique. I mean, it's also true that this shot just helps provide a large space for them to move in so it can last a long time for the final shot. But this is his last film before a move into award-winning dramas, so let's look at those. After Love and Death, Allen released a trio of dramas: Annie Hall, Interiors, and Manhattan. All were critically acclaimed, but I don't have Interiors, so let's start with Manhattan. In this scene from Manhattan, the characters Isaac and Mary are out on the town together, and their friendship is slowly developing, possibly into something more than friendship. The bulk of the scene is a series of medium shots following them from the front, where they're clearly on good terms but their relationship is still growing. Normally, a cinematographer would choose to get closer and closer to reveal growing intimacy, but interestingly, Allen climaxes the scene with an extreme wide of the two sitting by the East River. They are dwarfed in scale by the bridge, a visual device Allen used previously in Annie Hall. However, the distance doesn't communicate their distance from each other or even us. What they're saying or doing physically isn't important, and their placement in front of a sweeping urban scene of great beauty emphasizes the interpersonal triumph of the night. It's like the bridge is a shooting star pointed at the two of them. He never switches from the shot to anything else before ending the scene, showing just how important that shot is. Now let's look at Annie Hall. This scene is the closest example of Allen using distance in a very common way. The film's two main characters and prospective lovers, Annie and Alvy, just met each other in the previous scene at a doubles tennis match and aren't completely comfortable with each other yet. At the beginning of this scene, both Annie and Alvy are shot with AB coverage that never gets closer than a wide. Note that the closest Annie gets is a few inches closer than her starting position for most of the scene, and she continuously turns around and starts to leave. Once it becomes clear that she has a car and can offer Alvy a ride, Alvy enters the frame with Annie and they leave together, so much closer as for it to almost be a new kind of awkward. But the blocking and cinematography definitely communicate progress between them. My last example of Allen's use of distance comes from the ending of the film, so if you want to preserve catharsis or appreciate the ending more when you finally get around to watching it, plug your ears and close your eyes. The film ends with Alvy, the main character of the film, recounting his last meeting with Annie, his now ex-girlfriend. Several scenes are repeated briefly in a montage of their moments together as a couple, and some of those shots are exemplary of Allen's use of distance to suggest intimacy in a private way. In this shot where Alvy comforts Annie while she has a breakdown, the camera is placed at quite a distance, the distance one might keep if they weren't really prepared to handle the situation at hand, perhaps because they didn't know the person who was crying. An even stronger example is this shot, a glimpse at an intimate moment between Alvy and Annie, which is at such a distance as to be through a door, definitely suggesting that this is a special private moment through the use of perspective, specifically the perspective of someone who isn't qualified to be part of such a scene. This is a great way to suggest intimacy, and might even play into the film's themes of unpreparedness to handle it. The scene, and the entire film, ends with a wonderful shot of the two former lovers saying goodbye, perhaps for the last time. It is filmed through the window of the restaurant where they had eaten earlier, at a very long distance. This is a special moment, one that we are only tenuously invited to as viewers. Like in Manhattan, it doesn't matter what is actually being said by the two characters, because the framing of the shot communicates everything. And like Love and Death, after a lot of close-ups and simply closer framing than this shot, we know that this is goodbye. This scene is the past, and is something we can only glimpse at, a sort of last look at our characters before they're out of each other's lives and out of ours.